Do you still believe you're taking good care of your body? There's one habit many men over 60 quietly continue, not necessarily every day, but regularly. Sometimes to help them sleep, sometimes just to clear their minds. Some say it's healthy. Others avoid talking about it altogether. And then, one long-term Harvard study, nearly 2 decades in the making, dropped a number that made the medical world pause. It had to do with one's personal frequency and the health of the prostate. But what concerned me more than the statistic itself was how often this habit is misunderstood and unknowingly practiced by men whose bodies aren't what they were at 30. So the question is, does this habit actually help protect the prostate as many believe? Or is it, when paired with other factors like prolonged sitting, holding in urine, or chronic poor sleep, the missing piece in the puzzle of prostate enlargement, inflammation, and hormone imbalance after 60? Inside a man's body, the prostate is one of the earliest and most sensitive organs to show signs of aging. Though it's a small gland sitting just beneath the bladder, it plays key roles in multiple systems: semen production, urine flow regulation, sperm protection, and pelvic immune defense. But here's the catch. The prostate responds intensely to repeated stimuli, whether hormonal, circulatory, or mechanical. And after 60, the body's natural defense systems begin to weaken across the board. This is when hormonal shifts become significant. Testosterone levels drop, but not always in ways that show up on basic labs. In some men, total testosterone looks normal, but free testosterone, the biologically active form, drops sharply. That opens the door for the enzyme 5-alpha reductase to convert testosterone into DHT, a more potent androgen linked to tissue growth and prostate enlargement. Research from Harvard Health and Mayo Clinic both indicate that rising DHT levels, especially when unbalanced by free testosterone, lead directly to prostate cell proliferation, what we know as benign prostatic hyperplasia, BPH. And left unchecked, this can progress into chronic inflammation or even precancerous cellular changes. Most men over 60 don't feel this happening. They continue the same habits from midlife, including their personal routines, unaware that their prostate tissue no longer regenerates like it used to. Microducts become congested. Secretions don't drain as efficiently. Enlarged glands press on blood vessels. Even light, repeated stimulation can create microtraumas, seeding low-grade inflammation. This kind of chronic, low-level inflammation doesn't feel like an infection. No fever, no sharp pain. But it quietly swells the prostate, increases pressure, slows fluid flow, and raises the risk of blockage. Over time, inflamed cells begin releasing cytokines that damage tissue architecture, alter gene expression, and raise the odds of mutation. That's the biological backdrop of many early-stage prostate cancers, often with no warning signs at all. One overlooked player in this is estrogen. After 60, muscle mass decreases while visceral fat increases. That shift causes more testosterone to convert into estradiol via the aromatase enzyme. Excess estrogen doesn't just impact mood and sleep. It's also been linked to abnormal epithelial growth in the prostate. When high estradiol exists alongside high DHT, the risk increases. According to Cleveland Clinic data, this hormonal imbalance is common in men with elevated PSA or abnormal MRI findings. We also can't ignore the role of the autonomic nervous system. Sexual function relies on the balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic signaling. But after 60, that balance weakens. Repeated stimulation when neural regulation is impaired can lead to incomplete contractions, signal misfiring, and pressure buildup inside the gland, contributing to inflammation and swelling over time. All of this points to one truth: personal habits shouldn't be labeled simply as good or bad. They must be viewed through the lens of hormone status, tissue health, neural feedback, and circulation in an aging male body. The key is not how often, it's what condition your body is in when the habit happens. If the prostate is already inflamed, if DHT is elevated, if testosterone is bottomed out, if your sleep is shallow, hydration poor, zinc intake low, then even an average frequency might become excessive stress. But if your baseline health is strong, balanced hormones, good sleep, regular checkups, then even a higher frequency might not be harmful at all. This is why updated guidelines from places like Mayo Clinic are shifting away from symptom-based treatment and toward personalized risk forecasting, not just based on age, but on total biological context, hormone panels, micronutrient status, neurological signs, and lifestyle metrics. No one's telling you to stop something that brings you mental relief. But after 60, every repeated action deserves to be reconsidered. The prostate no longer protects itself the way it used to, and if you don't help it adapt, it may start changing quietly, until one day you notice the little things. Waking up to urinate more often, trouble sleeping after intimacy, or fatigue that just won't go away. The prostate is one of those organs we rarely think about, until it starts giving us trouble. Most men don't even notice it until they find themselves waking up 2 or 3 times a night to pee, or when a routine checkup after 60 reveals an unusual PSA result. But the truth is, the prostate doesn't just go bad overnight. It's a complex system, and the problems we see later in life are often the result of decades of wear and tear, especially from everyday habits. Anatomically, the prostate sits just below the bladder and wraps around the urethra, the tube that carries urine out of the body. This positioning gives it multiple roles, regulating urine flow, producing fluid for semen, and protecting sperm during ejaculation. Inside, it's made up of glandular lobes and tiny ducts, surrounded by smooth muscle and fibrous tissue. It's nourished by a web of blood vessels and controlled by the autonomic nervous system, both sympathetic and parasympathetic branches. The trouble begins with 3 things: time, hormones, and repeated physical stress. After 60, prostate tissue starts to lose elasticity, blood flow declines, and cellular anti-inflammatory defenses weaken. That means the ducts inside can clog more easily, glandular tissue thickens, and epithelial cells begin to grow out of control, laying the groundwork for benign enlargement and chronic inflammation. One of the biggest drivers of this? Low testosterone. According to data from the Mayo Clinic, about 30% of men between 60 and 79 have testosterone levels below the physiological norm. And when testosterone drops, the 5-alpha reductase enzyme in the prostate ramps up, converting what's left into DHT. DHT is powerful. It helps grow the prostate during puberty. But after middle age, it becomes a major culprit behind cell overgrowth, abnormal division, and pressure on the urethra. At the same time, body fat, especially visceral fat, increases. That accelerates the conversion of testosterone into estradiol, a type of estrogen. A little estrogen is normal and even helpful, but too much throws off hormone balance and encourages glandular overgrowth. Research from Cleveland Clinic has shown that prolonged estrogen exposure in the aging prostate raises the risk of fibrosis, cell damage, and silent PSA elevation, often with no obvious symptoms. But hormones aren't the only problem. The blood supply to the pelvic area also changes. After 60, the internal iliac arteries that feed the prostate begin to harden and narrow. With less blood flow, the gland doesn't get enough oxygen and nutrients. It can't bounce back from mild inflammation or stimulation as easily, and its ability to clear out toxins slows down, so inflammatory fluids, dead cells, and free radicals start to build up inside. This sets the stage for low-grade chronic inflammation. It doesn't hurt, but it chips away at prostate structure over time. Then there's the nervous system, the autonomic nerves that help the prostate contract and relax, especially during urination and ejaculation, don't fire as well as they used to. The signals slow down. The balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic control weakens. That can lead to incomplete emptying, poor muscle coordination, and pressure buildup in the gland. The result, that feeling of not emptying all the way, frequent urges, and a weaker stream. Another overlooked issue is tissue remodeling. When inflammation, hormonal imbalance, and poor circulation combine, the prostate starts to build up patchy collagen, basically a form of early-stage scarring. That makes the gland stiffer, less elastic, and less able to expel its fluid. You might have heard the phrase, poor gland emptying. That's what this is. And when the gland can't clear out old fluid, dead cells, and waste products, oxidative stress increases, raising the risk of DNA damage in prostate cells. None of these changes happen overnight. They build up slowly over years of repeating the same little habits, sitting too long, drinking too little water, not moving your hips. Even private, personal habits play a role. And when those personal routines aren't adjusted to match the gland's declining ability to recover after 60, they can overwhelm it, exhaust it, and open the door to long-term damage. According to Harvard Health, the prostate is one of the hardest working but most overlooked organs in the male body. It doesn't scream for attention like the heart or liver. It doesn't ache like arthritis. But it quietly influences your hormonal balance, your pelvic reflexes, your sleep quality, and your sense of control over your own body. A healthy prostate supports emotional balance, better rest, and independence in daily life. But when it weakens, the effects aren't just about peeing. They ripple across your mood, sleep, sex life, and even internal organ function. Understanding how the prostate is built and how it changes is key to rethinking what we do with our bodies every day. A single small habit, when repeated inside a weakened biological environment, can have bigger consequences than we realize. After 60, it's no longer about keeping up the same frequency or intensity of your habits. It's about knowing when to adapt to protect a prostate that can no longer heal itself like it once did. There's a strange irony in medicine I've seen time and again. When a behavior tied to instinct gets discussed too often in casual, unfiltered settings, it slowly becomes taboo in clinical conversations. Personal sexual habits, especially in older men, are one of the clearest examples. Many of my patients over 60 come in for prostate issues, but almost none bring up their ejaculation frequency until I ask directly. I remember a 67-year-old man once leaned in and whispered, "Doc, I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong, but I still release regularly. Honestly, maybe more than I did in my 40s. Then he asked me, am I helping or hurting my body? That's not an easy question to answer if we're just guessing, but thankfully, science doesn't guess. The now famous 20-year study from Harvard School of Public Health wasn't just some internet rumor. It followed nearly 32,000 men for almost 2 decades, tracking their lifestyle and reproductive health. The results: men who ejaculated 21 or more times per month had a 33% lower risk of developing prostate cancer compared to those who did so just 4-7 times monthly. That number made waves, not because it promoted the act itself, but because it forced the medical community to reconsider what we once considered too private to talk about. But as I've told many of my patients, it's not the act itself that harms or protects your prostate. It's how it happens, how often it happens, and the biological condition your body is in when it does. A 65-year-old man who's otherwise healthy, with good circulation, a clean diet and regular exercise, will have a very different prostate response than someone the same age with diabetes, belly fat, poor sleep, and a sedentary lifestyle. So if we focus only on frequency and ignore context, then every statistic becomes misleading. Biologically, ejaculation involves gland contractions, fluid release, nerve signaling, and hormonal shifts. When done in moderation, at the right time, it can help stimulate local circulation, flush stagnant fluids, and reduce duct blockages in the prostate. That's why some doctors call it self-cleaning, a playful term, but with a real scientific basis. However, a 2023 study in the Journal of Andrology raised a red flag. In older adults, if this habit is used as a coping mechanism for stress, boredom, or insomnia, the prostate may become overwhelmed. That's because recovery slows, hormone levels drop, and the gland tissue loses elasticity. The ducts may not contract fully, leaving residual fluid behind, setting the stage for chronic inflammation and secretion dysfunction. Let me paint a picture. If you flush your home plumbing once a week, things stay clean and flowing. But if you blast water through it every single day without checking the filters or giving it time to stabilize, eventually the pipes back up, or worse, crack under pressure. The prostate works much the same way. It needs regular activity, but also time to rest and regenerate. Now layer in the usual suspects: long hours sitting, sleep deprivation, chronic stress, high sugar intake, and animal fats. All of these lower the gland's ability to empty properly. Each contraction then becomes a burden instead of a release. A 2022 Mayo Clinic study found that among men aged 60-75 with high blood pressure and abdominal fat, ejaculating more than 15 times a month was actually linked to a 22% increase in chronic prostatitis due to impaired tissue recovery and higher internal oxidative stress. So no, frequency isn't bad in itself, but it has to match your body's real biological capacity. If you're maintaining a steady sexual routine, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But if you're feeling more drained afterward, if your sleep suffers, or if you notice pelvic tension that lingers for days, those are signals. Your prostate may be working harder than it should. And in those cases, you don't have to stop altogether. Just adjust, rest more, improve nutrition, and support cellular repair with healthier daily habits. Modern medicine is shifting in how it views this issue. We've moved away from blanket restrictions or blind encouragement. It's now about personalization, based on your biological age, actual testosterone levels, how your body reacts, and whether silent inflammation is already present. As I often tell my patients, there's no magic number for everyone, only a rhythm that fits you, as long as you take time to listen to it. The real question isn't how many times per month, but how you feel after each time. Most people assume the prostate only starts acting up because of age or genetics. But in my clinical experience, I've seen plenty of men with no family history of prostate issues still end up with chronic inflammation or BPH, simply because of their daily habits. Seemingly harmless behaviors, repeated over years, gradually disrupt blood flow, tissue structure, and the prostate's natural muscle contractions. One of the most damaging habits, sitting for more than 60 minutes at a time without standing. Whether it's working at a desk, driving, or just lounging in front of the TV all afternoon, prolonged sitting directs pressure right onto the pelvic floor where the prostate sits. Blood flow to the gland decreases, oxygen delivery slows down. A 2022 study published in Prostate International found that men over 60 who sit for more than 6 hours daily had a 29% higher risk of developing chronic prostatitis and irritative urinary symptoms. Then there's the nearly universal habit of holding in urine. Ever try to finish a meeting before heading to the restroom, or roll over at 3 a.m., and convince yourself it's not worth getting out of bed? In those moments, the bladder becomes overdistended, putting direct pressure on the prostate, especially if it's already slightly enlarged. Research from Cleveland Clinic shows that regularly delaying urination desensitizes the pelvic nerves, disrupts normal urethral reflexes, and leads to low-grade mechanical inflammation in the gland over time. Another habit I've seen in many prostate cases is bringing a smartphone into the bathroom. Maybe you've done it. Just a quick check of the news, but it turns into 15 minutes of scrolling. That extended sitting, coupled with relaxed posture, causes blood to pool in the rectal and prostate region. The phone's heat isn't the issue, it's the prolonged pressure. I had a 64-year-old patient. No smoking, no alcohol, strict vegetarian, and yet he had chronic prostatitis with no clear cause. We eventually uncovered a daily routine, 20 minutes every morning on the toilet with his iPad. Once he stopped, drank more water, and added some light movement to his mornings, his symptoms significantly improved in just 6 weeks. Late-night eating is another silent culprit, not just because it adds belly fat, but because it disrupts hormone rhythms. After 60, your body needs lower nighttime insulin and cortisol levels to repair tissue, including the prostate. But when you eat late, especially meals high in red meat, sugar, or salt, your adrenal glands pump out more cortisol and your IGF-1 levels spike, which overstimulates the prostate. According to Harvard Health Publishing, men who eat dinner after 8 p.m. and go to bed within 2 hours are 1.6 times more likely to experience prostate fluid secretion disorders. Dehydration is another overlooked habit. Not drinking enough water concentrates your urine, which increases the risk of residue buildup in the urethra, the tube passing right through the prostate. Those residues can irritate the surrounding tissue and trigger inflammation. If your urine looks dark yellow in the afternoon, that's your body and your prostate signaling dehydration. There's also a more subtle habit, using self-stimulation as an emotional coping mechanism. Many older adults living alone, dealing with stress or insomnia, turn to it not from biological need but from emotional imbalance. When this pattern repeats, the parasympathetic nervous system becomes dysregulated, leading to abnormal pelvic contractions and overstimulation of the prostate. WebMD warns that in individuals with insomnia, depression, or anxiety meds, forced sexual release can worsen chronic inflammation and intensify pelvic floor tension. Stress, when not released properly, becomes one of the most dangerous prostate disruptors. Chronic high cortisol weakens local immune response and slows tissue repair. If you stay up late, exposed to blue light from screens, eat snacks under stress, and absorb negative news, your entire neuroendocrine axis gets thrown off. And the prostate, which is extremely hormone-sensitive, often suffers first. Other everyday habits like drinking too much caffeine at night, using alcohol as a sleep aid, or consuming too much saturated fat all contribute to inflammation and prostate muscle spasms. When these behaviors stack up, they don't just cause nighttime urgency. They create an environment where precancerous changes are more likely to develop. The bottom line is this: the prostate isn't just shaped by age or testosterone. It's shaped by tiny repeated behaviors. Not all habits are harmful, but if you don't notice and adjust them in time, they slowly chip away at a gland already vulnerable to the ticking clock of biology. There's something strange that happens after 60. You could go years with certain personal habits, nothing extreme, just the same things you've always done, and suddenly what used to feel normal starts to cause discomfort. More frequent nighttime urination, a weaker stream, a lingering sense that something's off. The habit didn't change. Your body did. More specifically, your prostate did. What's really going on isn't about behavior. It's about a gland that's quietly shifting in structure, function, and sensitivity as the years pass. And after 60, these changes aren't always dramatic, but they are enough to make the prostate far less forgiving than it once was. Let's start with hormones. Most men think aging simply means testosterone goes down, but it's not that simple. As testosterone declines, more of it gets converted into DHT, dihydrotestosterone, a more potent form that's directly involved in prostate tissue growth. Too much DHT leads to enlargement, putting pressure on the urethra, which causes the classic symptoms: urgency, frequency, and that interrupted stream. At the same time, estrogen levels in aging men begin to rise, a fact that's rarely discussed. Estrogen isn't just a women's hormone. Men produce it too. When testosterone falls too low, estrogen becomes dominant. And excess estrogen triggers chronic inflammation in reproductive tissues, including the prostate. Studies from Harvard and Mayo Clinic now point to a disrupted balance between testosterone, DHT, and estrogen as the key hormonal triangle that makes the prostate more reactive in later life. Blood flow is another hidden piece of the puzzle. The prostate relies on a web of small blood vessels in the pelvic area to receive nutrients and oxygen. But after 60, those vessels stiffen. Their walls narrow. Collagen turnover slows. Less blood gets through. Waste products build up. That's why men with heart disease, high blood pressure, or diabetes often have more prostate trouble. They're not getting adequate microcirculation to this critical gland. And then there's oxidative stress, the silent saboteur. Over time, the cells in the prostate are bombarded by free radicals from fried foods, poor sleep, smoking, alcohol. These unstable molecules chip away at cellular membranes, distort protein structures, damage DNA. It happens slowly over years, but eventually it leaves behind a gland riddled with chronic inflammation and cellular debris. According to the Journal of Urology, over 65% of men with chronic prostatitis show elevated oxidative stress markers in their blood. One more problem: the gland simply stops repairing itself the way it used to. At 30, microscopic damage could be fixed overnight, but by 60, that repair cycle slows dramatically. More cells die than are replaced, and the new ones, if they show up, are often weaker, more prone to inflammation, or easily influenced by hormonal imbalances. Picture this, a once lush garden, but now the irrigation system is clogged, the soil is depleted, pests hide beneath the surface, and the gardener, he's aging. He still tries, still waters, still prunes, but no matter what he does, the plants are wilting. That's your prostate after 60 if it's left to fend for itself. That's why things you once did without consequence, like holding your urine, sitting too long, skipping water, or pushing yourself sexually when tired, can suddenly backfire. The prostate no longer bounces back like it did decades ago. It's not your fault. It's just biology. And the prostate is one of the first places where that biological aging makes itself known. The upside: once you understand what's really happening, you can begin to shift the environment inside your body. No, you can't rewind time, but you can create conditions where inflammation is reduced, tissue stays resilient, blood flow improves, and hormone balance is maintained. And that's how you support a healthier, steadier prostate well into your 70s and beyond. After 60, the prostate doesn't just age. It responds more dramatically to how you live each day. The good news: you don't need medications or complicated hormone therapies to make a difference. Sometimes the biggest changes come from the smallest habits, but not all changes are equal. The real question is, are you addressing the root causes or just masking the symptoms? Let's start with something deceptively simple: sleep. According to research from Harvard Medical School, men who sleep less than 6 hours a night are more likely to experience urinary issues and elevated PSA levels. Poor sleep reduces melatonin, which in turn disrupts the testosterone-DHT-estrogen axis and increases inflammation within the prostate tissue. That's why resetting your body clock is the first critical step. Go to bed and wake up at consistent times. Avoid blue light. Yes, that includes your phone and TV, at least an hour before sleep. I've had patients reduce nighttime urination episodes just by turning off devices at 9 p.m. and drinking their last glass of water around 6 or 7 p.m. No fancy treatments, just respecting the body's rhythm. Nutrition, timed right, also plays a powerful role in hormone regulation. A breakfast rich in healthy fats, like avocado, walnuts, or olive oil, paired with protein from eggs or fish, can help stabilize insulin and support testosterone production. Dinner should be light, focused on anti-inflammatory foods like broccoli, turmeric, or oily fish. WebMD highlights lycopene, an antioxidant found in cooked tomatoes, red grapefruit, and watermelon, as particularly effective in reducing prostate inflammation and slowing abnormal cell growth. Eating 5 to 7 servings of colorful fruits and vegetables each day, especially red, purple, and dark green, has been linked to a 32% lower risk of benign prostate issues. Here's a strategy most people overlook: improving blood flow to the pelvic region. Prolonged sitting is one cause of poor circulation around the prostate. Every 30 minutes, get up and walk for 5 minutes. Gentle exercises like bridges, light squats, or yoga poses like bridge and child's pose help relieve pelvic pressure and stimulate healthy blood flow to the gland. If possible, take a warm bath at night. Warm water relaxes smooth muscle in the pelvic area, improves circulation, and reduces tension within the prostate, a common cause of chronic inflammation. Combine that with a few minutes of deep breathing or mindfulness meditation, and you'll shift your nervous system from fight or flight to rest and digest, essential for sleep and hormonal recovery. And here's a surprising tip: sitting to urinate. Cleveland Clinic reports that men with an enlarged prostate often empty their bladder more completely when sitting down, as it relaxes the pelvic muscles. This doesn't just improve flow, it reduces the lingering sensation of not being done, which can become frustrating over time. Cutting back on caffeine and alcohol after 3 p.m. is also crucial. Caffeine is a diuretic and can stimulate the prostate, making you feel the urge to urinate even when your bladder isn't full. Alcohol dilates blood vessels too quickly, creating a kind of congestive inflammation around the prostate. If you enjoy these, opt for decaf coffee or a small glass of red wine at lunch, when it's least likely to disturb your sleep or hormone cycle. One of the most powerful tools of all: managing chronic psychological stress. Stress doesn't just lower testosterone, it also ramps up cortisol, the body's main inflammatory hormone, which wreaks havoc on prostate tissue. The answer isn't just relax more, it's to build recovery moments into your day. A 15-minute walk after lunch, 10 minutes of morning mindfulness, or turning off Wi-Fi at 9 p.m. to stop the mental noise. I once worked with a 68-year-old man who struggled with 4 or 5 nighttime bathroom trips, poor sleep, and chronic lower pelvic pain. After just 3 changes, eating dinner earlier, walking 20 minutes each morning, and meditating for 5 minutes before bed, he was down to 1 nightly trip, and the pelvic discomfort had disappeared completely. The takeaway is clear: your prostate doesn't just react to pills or surgery, it listens carefully to how you live. And that means you're not powerless. You just need to understand the signals and commit to the small daily steps that make a big difference over time. One of the most overlooked conversations in men's health, especially after 60, is the topic of sexual habits. Everyone thinks about it, but few talk about it openly, and even fewer truly understand how this personal behavior impacts internal health, particularly the prostate. So let me ask you a direct question. Have you ever wondered if something that feels harmless might actually affect what's going on inside your body? A large-scale study published in the journal European Urology, led by researchers at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, followed more than 31,000 men over nearly 20 years. The goal was to examine the relationship between ejaculation frequency and the risk of prostate cancer. The results surprised many. Men who ejaculated around 21 times per month had a 33% lower risk of developing prostate cancer compared to those who only did so 7 times per month. Why? One of the most accepted theories is the prostate stagnation hypothesis. Essentially, the prostate is responsible for producing seminal fluid. If this secretion system becomes stagnant over time, old fluids and cells may build up, creating an environment ripe for mild inflammation, oxidative stress, and even cellular changes. A healthy frequency of ejaculation acts like flushing the pipes. It helps clear out the system. There's also a neurochemical component. Ejaculation is associated with a release of dopamine, a neurotransmitter that helps reduce stress, lower blood pressure, and stimulate testosterone production. And testosterone is not just about libido. It influences muscle mass, bone density, mood, and prostate health itself. But here's the catch. Dopamine and testosterone only produce these benefits when sexual activity happens under emotionally stable, non-compulsive conditions. The problem begins when the behavior becomes a reflex for escaping stress, loneliness, or boredom, rather than a genuine biological need. In these cases, dopamine pathways get overused, throwing off the delicate balance between the nervous and hormonal systems. Studies show that compulsive or addiction-driven sexual behavior can disrupt dopamine receptors, leading to emotional numbness, anxiety, and chronic fatigue. These effects don't just harm your mind, they also indirectly impact your hormones and your prostate. And let's be honest, have you ever felt more drained afterward than you did before? If the answer is yes, you might be crossing that blurry line between healthy release and a habit that depletes you over time. Here's the real truth. The issue isn't the act itself, it's how you relate to it. When sexuality is part of an emotional connection, or even practiced alone, but with conscious awareness and moderation, it can absolutely be part of a healthy prostate lifestyle. But when it becomes repetitive, unconscious, or compulsive, it affects not just your prostate, but also your emotional well-being and hormonal stability. To build a healthier relationship with your own sexual rhythm, ask yourself these 3 questions before engaging. 1. Am I doing this because of true physiological desire, or am I trying to escape an uncomfortable feeling? 2. Do I feel relaxed and balanced afterward, or drained, empty, and guilty? 3. Is my frequency causing me to neglect other aspects of life, like work, exercise, or connecting with loved ones? If any of your answers lean negative, it may be time to reevaluate your relationship with this part of your health. And the good news? You don't have to suppress it or feel ashamed. You just need to understand, adjust, and recreate balance. I once worked with a 64-year-old man who came in complaining of nighttime urination, lower abdominal discomfort, and persistent fatigue. When we explored further, he admitted to daily sexual habits, not out of desire, but because he didn't know what else to do in the evenings. After just 6 weeks of gentle exercise, a structured sleep routine, and guided relaxation techniques, his frequency returned to a natural rhythm. He slept better, felt emotionally lighter, and the discomfort around his abdomen disappeared. This shows that the root issue often isn't the act, it's the motivation behind it. And your prostate will thank you if you treat yourself with awareness instead of judgment. My friend, if you're still here, still listening all the way to the very end, then let me start by saying this. Thank you, truly, from the bottom of my heart. Not everyone has the patience or the care to sit through a conversation like this. And if you did, you deserve to be acknowledged. Because what you just did wasn't simply watch a video. It was laying the first brick in a new chapter of your health. One rooted in awareness, intention, and deeper understanding of your body. Together, we've unpacked a topic that's rarely spoken of openly, but silently affects millions of men over 50, the prostate. A small organ, yes, but one that carries large burdens. And did you notice? The triggers behind inflammation, enlargement, or dysfunction don't come from some mysterious external force. They begin with habits. From sitting too long, drinking too little water, eating too much red meat, or holding on to stress for far too long. From ignoring your body's signals, poor sleep, a weakening stream, persistent fatigue. Even in how you manage your intimate needs, often alone, sometimes unconsciously, and without checking in with your true emotional state. Let me ask you honestly, are you living through your habits, or are your habits living through you? Have you truly cared for your prostate, or have you left it unattended until it's too late? Only you can answer that. And the beauty is, now you have the information, the awareness, and the power to choose differently. You don't have to change everything overnight. Just start with something small. A warm glass of water in the morning, a short walk between meetings, going to bed 30 minutes earlier. Asking yourself, do I really need this action, or am I just running an old script? No one is perfect. But those who begin with understanding always have a chance to live stronger. And no, you don't have to do this alone. If your symptoms persist, talk to your doctor. Don't hesitate to speak with a professional who can guide you. Because prostate health isn't just about being a man, it's about being present, being joyful, and living a life not ruled by discomfort or anxiety. I invite you, tonight maybe, grab a notebook and write down 3 simple things you can start doing to support your prostate. No one else needs to see it, just you. But make sure it feels worthy of the life and body you've been given. Before we part ways, I want you to remember this. Aging isn't a decline. It's an invitation to live deeper, more awake, and more fulfilled. You don't need to sprint. Just walk in the right direction. And if this video helped you even a little, I'd be honored if you hit subscribe, share it with someone who might need it, and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your questions, your real experiences. Every voice here adds to this shared journey we're building together at Vigor without age. I wish you health, peace, happiness, and the best of luck in all that you do. And don't forget, change doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to begin today.